Where does the Temple Mount start?
Yes, so the Temple Mount becomes important for Judaism because this is the place where Abraham was asked by God to sacrifice his son. And this is the place where Solomon decides to build the temple. The temple in Jerusalem is where God lives. God is summoned into this place.
What if I told you the greatest secret of Jerusalem has been buried for over 2,000 years? Beneath the Temple Mount, in a chamber sealed since the Roman Empire. Scientists discovered something that made even the most seasoned archaeologists stop breathing. A stone basin covered in ash, etched with inscriptions describing the dwelling place of God himself. Could this be the very first Temple of Solomon, long thought to be legend? For centuries, scholars dismissed it as myth. But what they found doesn't just challenge history, it threatens to rewrite it entirely. To understand why this discovery matters, you first have to understand what the Temple Mount actually is. Jerusalem rises from the hills of Israel like a crown of ancient stone, but one part of the city towers above everything else, not in height, but in meaning: the Temple Mount. 35 acres of limestone plateau sitting in the heart of the Old City. And for billions of people around the world, it represents the single most sacred piece of ground on the planet. For Jews, this is where King Solomon built the first temple nearly 3,000 years ago. A temple described in Scripture as housing the Ark of the Covenant itself, filled with the literal presence of God. The innermost chamber, the Holy of Holies, was considered so sacred that only the high priest could enter, and only once per year. According to tradition, this was the physical meeting point between heaven and earth. That temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BCE. Generations later, a second temple rose on the same spot, only to be burned to the ground by Roman legions in 70 CE. The Western Wall that millions visit today is not part of the temple itself. It is merely a retaining wall. The actual temple has been gone for nearly 2,000 years. For Muslims, this same plateau is the noble sanctuary, the third holiest site in Islam, the place from which the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. The Dome of the Rock, that iconic golden structure that dominates Jerusalem's skyline, was built in the 7th century to mark that sacred spot. For Christians, this is where Jesus overturned the tables of the money changers. 3 faiths, 1 hilltop. Thousands of years of blood, war, worship, and waiting. And beneath all of it, layer upon layer of buried history that no one has been allowed to properly excavate. Until now, here is the cruel irony that has tortured archaeologists for over a century. Beneath the Temple Mount lies what might be the most important archaeological treasure in human history, and it is essentially illegal to touch it. The religious sensitivities surrounding this plateau are so intense, the political tension so combustible, that even suggesting an excavation could trigger an international crisis. One misplaced shovel could start a war. In Jewish tradition, somewhere beneath that ancient platform lies the exact location of the Holy of Holies. The problem is that no one knows precisely where. The temples were destroyed, the markers were lost. According to Jewish law, accidentally stepping on the ground where the Holy of Holies once stood without proper spiritual preparation constitutes a profound transgression. Because of this fear, many Orthodox Jews refuse to set foot on the Temple Mount at all. For Muslims, any archaeological activity that might validate Jewish historical claims is viewed as a direct assault on sovereignty over the site. The political arrangement is extraordinarily fragile. Israel controls security, the Islamic Waqf controls religious administration, neither side trusts the other, so the ground remains sealed. The secrets stay buried. Then in 1999, something unexpected shattered the stalemate. The Islamic Waqf began construction on an underground mosque. The project was unauthorized. It was conducted without archaeological supervision. and it involved the removal of hundreds of truckloads of earth from beneath one of the most historically significant sites on the planet. That soil, saturated with 3,000 years of artifacts, was dumped in the Kidron Valley, treated like garbage. When Israeli archaeologists learned what had happened, they were devastated. Millennia of potential discoveries had been scattered without documentation. But two researchers saw something else, an opportunity. In 2004, archaeologists Gabriel Barquet and Zaki Devira launched the Temple Mount Sifting Project. Operating out of a public park, they began recovering what had been lost. Volunteers arrived from around the world. Day after day, year after year, they sifted through that discarded earth by hand. What they found was staggering. Over 500,000 artifacts emerged, coins from the time of Herod, arrowheads from the Crusader era. But hidden among the fragments were objects that made researchers pause. Items tied to ritual purity, tools associated with priestly duties, and an unusual concentration of artifacts from the First Temple period. Then came the discovery that changed everything. A volunteer noticed a small hardened lump of clay. When examined under magnification, it revealed itself to be a bulla, an ancient seal impression. The inscription was in Paleo-Hebrew. It read, "Belonging to Gedaliahu, son of Immer." The name Immer appears in the book of Jeremiah as a priestly family active during the First Temple period. This tiny piece of clay had just confirmed the existence of a real person mentioned in Scripture. More bulli followed, names and titles that aligned with biblical records. The dating was consistent. The authenticity was verified. But what truly startled the researchers was the pattern. These First Temple artifacts concentrated in specific areas, pointing towards particular sections of the mount. Sections that corresponded with ancient descriptions of sacred zones. The sifting project had provided the breadcrumbs. Now scientists needed to follow them to their source. Between 2021 and 2024, researchers began combining cutting-edge technology with overlooked historical documents. Since physical excavation beneath the Temple Mount remained forbidden, they deployed ground-penetrating radar. The scans revealed something remarkable. Beneath the bedrock, straight edges and geometric shapes appeared where natural geology should have produced only irregular stone. The signatures of man-made construction, sealed away for centuries. As workers carefully cleared debris from an ancient structure, they uncovered a partially buried staircase carved into the limestone. It descended into darkness. What they found at the bottom was a forgotten antechamber. The upper walls bore Byzantine-era carvings from the 4th or 5th century CE. But when researchers examined the floor, they discovered something far older beneath it. The foundation stones were massive, finely cut blocks stacked with a precision rarely seen after the First Temple period. This chapel had been built directly on top of something that predated it by centuries. Then came the detail that sent chills through the research team. A secondary staircase led even deeper into the bedrock. It had been deliberately blocked, not by natural collapse, but by human hands. Someone long ago had wanted this passage sealed forever. The researchers moved carefully through the darkness, past ancient water channels, past the blocked staircase. And there, at the end of a passage that had not felt human breath since before the Common Era, they found a sealed stone threshold. The chamber beyond was small, no more than 10 feet across, but what sat in the center stopped every person in their tracks. A stone basin, round and shallow, half buried in ash. Around it, fragments of burned incense, small offerings, and blackened clay oil lamps had been arranged with unsettling care. The basin bore markings faded by millennia but legible. The script was Paleo-Hebrew. The words, when translated, read, "He who dwells here, his spirit never leaves." The team fell silent. Those words aligned with ancient biblical descriptions of the Holy of Holies, the innermost chamber where, according to Scripture, the Shekinah, the divine presence of God, was said to dwell. A space so sacred that only the high priest could enter, and only once per year. No artifact from that space had ever been recovered. No physical evidence of its existence had ever surfaced. Until now, the dating was verified. The lamps matched other examples from the 8th to 7th century BCE. The basin's limestone composition was consistent with materials used during Solomon's reign. This chamber delivered what generations of archaeologists had only dreamed of finding: physical datable evidence of the most sacred zone beneath the Temple Mount. Evidence that aligned directly with biblical tradition. Evidence that transformed faith into fact. The researchers understood immediately what they had found, and they understood why it could never be announced casually. This was not just an archaeological discovery. This was proof that the place where ancient Israelites believed God himself had dwelt was real, tangible, preserved in stone and ash. Someone thousands of years ago had left a message, a testimony carved in rock to ensure the truth would never be forgotten, no matter how many empires rose and fell above it. The discovery has sent quiet shockwaves through the academic world, but the announcement has been careful, deliberately vague. The authorities who know what was found understand the implications. The Temple Mount remains sacred to 3 global religions. Any claim that one tradition's narrative has been definitively proven could ignite protests, diplomatic crises, or worse. The political situation in Jerusalem is already a powder keg. This discovery is a lit match. For millennia, the Temple Mount has kept its secrets. Now, for the first time, we have glimpsed what was thought impossible. But this is only the beginning. Chambers remain sealed. Messages remain unread. What other truths lie buried beneath the surface? History has been cracked open, but the story is far from over. When the next door is opened, what will we finally see? And more importantly, are we ready for what waits beneath the stones? What do you think lies in the other sealed chambers? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe, because we're going to keep uncovering the secrets they tried to bury forever.